Okay, so you want to know the secret to making travel not boring as hell in D&D? Well, don't worry, because I got you covered with all the hot tips and tricks for all you new up-and-coming DMs. Only spoiler alert, there's no secret. I mean, except for the secret at exactly 8 minutes and 7 seconds into the video. Hi everybody, my name is Lee, the DM of the new D&D podcast show Behold the Crit, here to talk to you about how to make travel interesting in your campaign. Now, I do want to preface before I get into the video that there is no right way to run travel, just like there's no right way to play D&D. However, in this video, I'm going to be going over some strategies that I use to make travel more interesting. And as always, this is a discussion, it's not a how-to video. So if you have any ideas that you utilize, or even if you disagree with something that I say, drop it in the comment section below because I guarantee someone came to this video will probably find your comment useful. You never know, you might make someone's day with just a single comment on a random YouTube video. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump on into the content. Now, the first thing that I want to say is that travel can be intimidating for DMs, specifically newer ones. No DM truly can guarantee where their players want to go, and as such, prepping for travel can be very difficult. But I'm here to tell you that it doesn't have to be. Travel is something that I personally struggled with a lot when I started running D&D, and just like you, I went out searching for ways to fix that or kind of easy tips and tricks to make it better. And across all of my researching and experience, I've come up with a couple of strategies that I like to use for running travel, as well as learned a couple of difficult lessons. The most important lesson is one that many DMs learn in their first couple of sessions, but that is the don't overplan. Any experienced DM can probably tell you that the most difficult part of any DM's job is not overplanning. Trying to maximize time on creating content and the actual adventure, rather than wasting time on redundant things in the campaign, is one of the hardest things a DM can learn, and honestly, if anyone tells you that they haven't struggled with that, they are flat out lying to you. Applying that lesson to travel can be difficult, and unfortunately because of that, it really discourages newer DMs just because there are certain things that you might plan that never actually get used in the campaign. Which is why it is so important when you're prepping for travel sessions that you don't get too attached to anything you create. Remember, you might be creating the story, but the players are the story. You're simply the narrator. Make sure you are potentially prepared to waste time creating an encounter that the players might never interact with, because I guarantee you there will be a point in time, if not many of the times, the players will go in the completely opposite direction. It's just a rule of the universe. But don't get too discouraged. Just because you made an encounter that the players didn't get to yet, doesn't mean you can't reuse that later on in the campaign. And with that in mind, I think it's time to actually move on into the 3 strategies that I implement whenever I'm creating travel segments for D&D. And I gotta give credit to Matt Colville and the Dungeon Dudes for inspiration for this, because I definitely took some of their strategies, although I definitely elaborated more in this video. With that out of the way, the 3 methods of travel that I like to utilize in D&D are 1, the montage, 2, the exploration, and 3, the journey. Each of these differs a little bit, but let me start off with the montage. First thing about the montage is that I'm here to tell you it is okay to skip travel. It's okay. There is nothing wrong with skipping travel, and many times it's actually preferred by the players. But what's not okay is that you're not subscribed, so you should probably fix that. Anyways, try not to worry about breaking a rule around D&D because they're not really rules, they're more like guidelines. The only thing that I want to clarify, however, is that if you do decide to skip travel, that you utilize the montage to make the entire journey seem epic. I don't know why'd I do that? The montage is purely scene setting, purely on the DM, and it's where I elaborate travel. Use some flashy descriptive words, tell them about some difficult traveling over some rocks or something like that, just to describe how the party got to the destination. The most difficult part about running the montage, after you accept that it's okay to skip travel, is finding the descriptive words that work for you to make the travel sound epic rather than just a hand wave. This can take a bit of time to get used to, but the more you push yourself out of your comfort zone and stop worrying about sounding silly, the better you're gonna get at it. To be honest, I still struggle with descriptive words and such like that. It's a really big internal battle that I have with myself. But when you hear a good DM explain travel, it is just so epic. If you haven't already, I highly suggest at least watching a single episode of Critical Role with Matt Mercer's descriptive words are just amazing, or one of my personal favorites, High Rollers with Mark Humes. They are both very good at descriptive language, and they give you some good food for thought when you're thinking about this stuff. Just listen to how they set the scene and watch their players' faces while they're describing it, and you can tell how engaged they are in something so minuscule. The next strategy that I use is called the exploration, and honestly this is probably going to take up most of the video since it's the one that I use the most and also needs the most explanation, so buckle up. The exploration is where the players have 1 to 3 encounters on their journey to the destination, depending upon the length of the travel. And that might seem like a lot, but let me explain. Right now, you're probably asking, well, what if the players throw a curveball at me and go somewhere that I totally didn't expect? Well, think about it like this. First off, you're never going to know where the players go. They're always going to surprise you, so just stop thinking about that. But second off, everywhere in your world should have something for your players to interact with. These encounters during travel are kind of what make it feel like a living, breathing world entity rather than just random stats on a paper. Think about it from a character's perspective. When characters travel from town to town, it's not a 5-minute walk. It usually takes a few hours, days, or even weeks to get to their destination. And this is where having 2 to 3 encounters can be very helpful because it makes your world feel like it's living and breathing, where it's not just a, quick 5-minute walk to the next town. This travel strategy does a really good job of making your world feel big and immersive, but be careful because running static encounters off a static encounter table can have the opposite effect. Don't get me wrong, I am not hating on encounter tables. They are very, very helpful for what they are, and honestly, I use them a lot to get ideas and brainstorm thoughts off of them. But what I am saying is that if you use only static encounter tables for your random travel sessions, it's gonna start to feel more like a filler episode of an anime than an actual D&D campaign. You know, the filler where there's not actually any content and it's just like the main characters go for a beach day or some shit like that. No one cares. And that's all you're doing with static tables. Think about your world, what's going on in your world, where are your players in your world, and then apply that to those encounter tables. I am a firm believer that nothing happens without a reason in D&D. Now that reason might be something as simple as, the bandits want your gold, but that's still a reason. Maybe the bandits are townfolk of a nearby village that are forced to a life of crime because of a difficult home life. Or maybe they're just asshats. The important fact isn't the details of the reason per se, it's more so that it has a reason to happen. The reason might have more to do with your story at large, or it might just be more of a smaller environmental encounter. If you're traveling through a frozen tundra, you're probably unlikely to find 1d4 blink dogs. However, you might find 1d4 winter wolves. It's something so small but goes a long way to creating a meaningful sense of vastness in your world. Now usually when I know my players are preparing for travel, I generally have 2 to 3 encounters prepared on my own kind of encounter table. But they might not run into every single one of those encounters. Generally I find anywhere in the ballpark of 1 to 3 encounters is good enough to make travel feel meaningful but not like you're slogging through it. Take this for an example. In one of my campaigns, my players were traversing a desert to try and get to a desert oasis known as Kotiri. Obviously, in a desert, you might not expect many encounters. However, in this specific scenario, the players actually encountered a wandering merchant. The merchant was going from the area that they're trying to get to back to the original location where they actually came from. Now, little did they know that this wandering merchant was actually a larger player in the grand scheme of things. But at that point in time, for the players, he was just a merchant. Also, I should clarify that encounter does not have to be battle. It can be anything like a wandering merchant, a social encounter, dreams, visions, anything like that. And if you add variety to your encounters, it makes it feel like it's fluid and interesting and not overbearing with 3 fights in a row. And if you don't have any idea what your players are planning, just plan 3 encounters anyways, just to have in your back pocket. Even if you don't use them now, you'll have those encounters in your back pocket just in case you find yourself in a situation just like this one. But that's the exploration. Let's finish it up with the journey. Now, the journey is a method that I haven't really used ever in our D&D livestream campaign because it doesn't really fit the bill, but it essentially can be summed up in the quote, "The journey is the story." The easiest way to explain this is Lord of the Rings. Sam and Frodo. The entire story is their journey from the Shire to Mordor. Obviously, there are pit stops along the way, but the main overarching storyline is Frodo and Sam getting from point A to point B. Now, this method is a little bit more niche and as such not frequently as used as the other ones, however it's important to bring up nonetheless. Generally, if your story is all about the journey, you won't really need to prepare encounters because honestly the entire adventure is the travel and as such it wouldn't be much a story without encounters. Another great example of this is the D&D module Out of the Abyss. Quick warning, there are massive spoilers for the Out of the Abyss module coming up, so I'll give you 5 seconds to just quickly skip to the next segment of the video, which you can see in the timeline. But in the meantime, you could, maybe hit the subscribe button. Good way to spend time, Out of the Abyss starts off in the Underdark with the entire purpose trying to escape. The entire first half of the module is all about getting back to the surface world while encountering different things to learn why they should probably care about what's going on in the Underdark. It's honestly kind of really well written. The entire purpose starting off in the campaign is to escape and leave, only to find out what's actually going on, and after you finally escape, you then have to go back to solve the problems that you found initially. At the beginning of the campaign, they have no idea what's going on, and once they finally achieve their main goal of actually escaping, their actual main goal has probably swapped to stopping whatever the hell is going on underground. A very difficult adventure, but a very well written and well thought out adventure in my opinion. There's not many D&D campaigns that focus on the journey, so if you're interested in that kind of play, I highly suggest taking a look at Out of the Abyss. There's some things in there that can be a little bit difficult if you're a newer DM, and honestly, it leaves a little bit out that it really should probably put in there. However, if you're interested in it, it's definitely worth the pickup. But anyways, that's the journey style. Arguably the easiest since the adventure is travel, and there's the least amount of wasted potential time spent creating encounters, since you've probably already created that with the entire campaign, but at the same time, it's the least utilized, so you kind of get a balance there. But anyways, those are my 3 methods for making travel unique, meaningful, and interesting, so hopefully those all helped you out. If you have any questions, concerns, suggestions, please go ahead and put those in the comments section below. Chances are, if someone's looking for a video like this, they can use all the help they can get, so your comment might even help someone later on down the line. And if you haven't already, be sure to check out our D&D livestream show, Behold This Crit, every Friday at 7 PM EST for some D&D shenanigans. But anyways, that is all. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you on Friday.